Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Friday, September 22nd, 2022. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. Today is episode 118 and I have the great pleasure of having someone whose work I've been reading on and off for years and whose father I'm also was an immense fan of when he wrote for LouRockwell.com for many years and was a big influence on me. I have today with me Bretigne Schaffer, daughter of the great, in my mind, the great Butler Schaffer, and an immense personality within the libertarian community in her own right. And I'm not sure what we're going to talk about today, but it's this kind of one of those things where I love what I do now because I get to meet people whose work I've appreciated in the past and get to finally meet them for real and have an honest to God conversation and put a face and a voice to the name. So Bretigne, welcome. And how are you today?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. I'm doing well. Kind of living a chaotic life right now as we kind of recently moved from California to Kentucky and still finding our bearings, but doing well, doing well.
It's quite a culture shock to move from the left coast to Appalachia.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had, I've kind of lived all over the world. I lived in Asia for many years, and our family originally came from Nebraska, so California was a huge culture shock, and now coming back here it kind of is again. But it's for the best. It's a positive change for sure.
Your story is not dissimilar to what I've heard from many people. As a matter of fact, I have multiple patrons who have begun settling in this area around where I am in North Florida. So I've gotten to meet many of them. I've got to become friends with a couple of them, which has also been really great because it's like just my wife and I both, we live in on 13 acres in the middle of, hot, humid North Florida with some goats and some ducks and all of this stuff. And we've been here for almost 20 years. And it is at times a kind of lonely existence. So it's like, oh my God, we have friends now. So it is, but I know also that the transition from moving out of, we lived in Gainesville for a long time, I think a group of friends and everything, and then the transition out and moving into, effectively the country, and then having to effectively find, a different group of people to fall in with, was very difficult.
So. Yeah, it's putting down all the roots. You kind of, especially once you have a family. I mean, I moved around a lot when I was single. Mm-hmm. Once you have a family, it's like all the roots you put down, all the things for your kids, everything. You don't kind of realize how much that grounds you in a place until you pull up and move somewhere else. And it's like, oh wait, what plumber do I call? Or, where do we go to get our hair done? And just right. all the little things. Yeah, but it is interesting how there's this kind of culture of exiles sort of forming in, I'm noticing it like definitely Florida, but Florida, Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, Oklahoma. We've got some friends in Oklahoma now who it's like all these people that we knew or that we've met are kind of flooding to this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is very real. My wife has friends that she's met online that have all moved out of California. They've moved to the Cumberland Valley and Cumberland Plateau, in Tennessee. I've got other people who've moved into North Georgia and whatnot. So yeah, it is, and it was kind of predictable. I remember when Trump first proposed the tax cuts, and that he implemented, and we can get upset about Trump with all of the spending and all the ridiculous, weak dollar policy. But the one thing I did notice about and I wrote about at the time about the tax plan was that it was, I thought, the greatest piece of political kit against your political enemies since FDR's New Deal, because it was structured to ensure the exact kind of exodus that we're seeing out of New York and the Northeast and the left coast that we're seeing now. And so, and that I could see it then because the elimination of SALT, the state and local income tax deduction, then says, well, hey, why am I paying these ridiculous property taxes to live in an overpriced property in California when I can go to Florida and I can buy a house and acreage for 1/3 the price, pocket the difference, and not even pay state or local income tax?
Right. Yeah, I didn't connect the dots back then. but we'd been talking about leaving California for pretty much for as long as we'd been there, actually, for other reasons. But family keeps you there. My mom is still there. My sister's still there. It finally, it's crazy. The taxes are crazy. The regulations are crazy. I mean, it's really like, even before COVID, it was like they were trying to drive people out and trying to, the thing, whatever it was, AB 50, I think it was, that essentially criminalized contract labor. So you couldn't be an independent contractor anymore.
Right.
It's like, what are you people trying to do? You're pushing this exodus, and then everything else. I wrote a piece about it a while ago about just all the things, like everything the California government was doing to the people living there. It really, and by the time the COVID stuff hit, it's like they're waging war on us. I mean, it's really, there's really kind of no other way to look at it. They're everything they did is what, if it were a foreign power doing these things, you would react as if a foreign power were attacking you and trying to kill you. So yeah, it's just one thing after another. And that finally, we made the choice, but long before we did, a whole lot of other people were heading out, because it's just ridiculous.
Well, it's been a long held theory of, or I wouldn't even say theory at this point, but kind of proven hypothesis that we are ruled by vandals who are attempting to destroy everything good and decent about the structure of the United States from a legal perspective, and then from a societal and cultural perspective as well. I refuse to even call him. He is President Biden, but it's the Biden junta. It's not the Biden administration. And the same thing I think is happening in California. I wrote a piece the other day for my patrons. It hasn't gone public enough, but I talked about, it was an interesting article on Zero Hedge the other day about tax receipts in California have dropped 11% year over year.
I saw that. Yeah, great news.
Well, and at the same time, California is dealing with a massive budget surplus right now. They've got about $100 billion or whatever it is, some massive budget surplus. But mostly that's just, money laundering, COVID relief funds from the CARES Act. That's all that really is. Mm-hmm. And that's all going to dry up in the next year. And at the same time, Gavin Newsom put forth 40 different bills to advance the green agenda. Now, California can't pay for what it's got now. Now it's going to be on the verge of a drought. It's continually having electricity problems because of fake deregulation of their electricity market 20 years ago. And one of the things that popped into my head was I was going through California and I was looking at what was happening in Germany, or the European Union in general, which is the exact same thing. They're force feeding through a green agenda. They've manufactured an energy crisis through the fake deregulation of their natural gas markets, which then created a fake market for electricity, which has ballooned electricity prices immensely over their cost. And then what are they setting up? But what looks like a manufactured collapse of their economy so that they can usher in some kind of, terrible, well, in this case, technocratic communist state, which is what they want to do in Europe. Now, I went ahead and I connected the dots and I said, well, okay, if they know they're going to lose the midterms and they know that they're probably going to lose the 2024 election, and they still want to destroy the United States, and all the people of conscience are moving to the red states and they're getting redder, then how do you stop that process from, what do you do to make that process as ugly as possible? Well, you force California into default and then give us the choice of whether to bail them out or force them to secede. And then you get and that's your Hobson's choice, which is all these people ever do, is create these Hobson's choices for us. So I don't know. It's just, this is kind of the way I can't get around these people. This is all they ever do to us.
Yeah, it's and I'd be happy with them seceding. I mean, I'd be happy with everyone seceding. Yeah, it's hard. I think if more people recognized that people in power aren't there to help you, that their interests are not aligned with yours, with
Right.
ours. If people just got that one thing, we'd be living in a very different world. I mean, that's the idea that this country was built on, was that,
Mhm.
government is something you need to protect yourselves from. It's
Right.
not a big cuddly, you know, teddy bear that is coming here, that you can cuddle up to and it's going to give you all the things you want.
Right.
But that's what people have now kind of been indoctrinated to believe, and we're just, this is what happens when you believe that. This is the world you live in when people believe that.
And then worse, they have now created the othering of the people who are not down with the communism is a very, very dangerous thing. And I don't know if I'm sure you saw the horrific Reichstag fire speech that Biden did at Independence Hall a few weeks ago.
I
That's the
didn't watch it. I never listen to what these people say. I try not to listen to
right.
them because it'll just, I have other things I need to focus on, and it'll just enrage me. I already know what I need to do. I already know what they are. I feel like I'm not going to get more information from listening to what Biden has to tell me, but I did see images of it. And wow, I mean,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, I guess maybe I don't have it, and probably a lot of us don't have an appreciation for how gullible many other people are, or how they don't see what we're seeing.
Right.
They don't know what that means in historical context,
Right.
and are effectively being manipulated by the propaganda, by the things that we've seen throughout history, and we should know better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of us, especially in the libertarian world, kind of, if anything, overestimate the awareness of other people,
Sure.
because we're sitting here looking at this and going, well, it's comical. Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to, this is ridiculous. They're on this precipice where all you have to do is just poke them and they're going to come falling down because this is so ridiculous. And I do think that, but maybe I'm wrong to think that, because maybe there are enough people who do follow along the way that the manipulators want them to, even though many of us are looking at it saying, well, this is absurd.
I think you're the important part about this. I only watched bits and pieces of the speech. I can't stomach listening to Biden for more than about 30 seconds at a time. But it
Yeah.
is the image system that matters. It was like watching the Democratic National Convention with the twerking weirdness and the green glow with the green filter over the American flag. Like they were denying the basic color scheme of the United States. And here they were invoking an image system reminiscent of V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
And, and you're like, okay, I know enough people get that meme at this point that CNN realized it in real time and trying to turn the background purple. Like they tried
Right.
to do something to like
To make
or
it look like
magenta or
something
whatever it was,
other than what it was.
because they're like, oh, we went a little too far here, and that's the interesting part about this. And so I know before we started talking, this is all the kind of get to know you thing. I know that I asked you what we wanted to talk about today, and you already touched on it a little bit, which is that I don't want to spend time complaining about the way the world is, as opposed to starting to try and figure out what solutions we can start to implement. Because for those of us who do see, it is not enough to just complain about it. Like rightly, we in the libertarian community are yelled at by conservatives all the time, or paleo conservatives, or alt righters, or whomever, that we're if we're not going to get out of the complaining, and we're not going to realize that some of the arguments that we even put forth are just being interpreted to carry water for the bad guys, and we're not looking to put solutions on the table, then we're part of the problem and not part of the solution. And so one of the things that
Yeah.
you mentioned is that you're now focused on that concept of the solution. So if you want to talk about that,
Yeah,
what you're doing, it'd be great.
yeah, even before COVID, I was kind of coming to this conclusion a few years before COVID. Um, because even I look at some of the things I said back then, it's like, wow, I thought things were bad then, I had no idea what was coming. Um, but I had this strong sense that it was of urgency, that it was really important to get the people together who get it, who understand what the problem is, and who want to do something about it, even if they don't know what it is to do, but who want to take action to do something, not to
Mhm.
just sit around and complain. So I stopped, for the most part, I just stopped having conversations with people who didn't already get it. It's
Mhm.
like I just felt like I, I don't have the time. I've done this and I don't have the time or the energy to put into that anymore. And it's just so urgent to get this other stuff moving.
Mhm.
And so about, what was it, like a year before? No, it was actually, it's funny. I had the idea for my podcast about a year before COVID hit. And then I ended up doing my first episode with Jeff Tucker,
Mhm.
um, the week that Newsom had basically shut down California. So like I think it was a day
Wow.
or so after that announcement came out. That was my first episode. But I really hadn't intended it to be about COVID. It was really I wanted to bring people together to start talking about solutions.
Right.
And since then, so I still have the podcast going, but since then I've started a membership group on Substack with that purpose. And that's for people who are serious about getting things going, either, in the world of medicine, health and medicine, finance, alternative currencies, alternative exchange methods, food freedom. There's a lot of stuff going on now with
Yep.
food independence and
Mhm.
distribution. And how, we're at this point where we have to start thinking through how are we gonna actually get basic, meat, vegetables, these kinds of things, because it's like there's this, first of all, there's the whole USDA structure and all of that
Right.
that gets in the way. But now it's, they want us all to be eating bugs and corn, and it's like, so that's a whole issue. So I've started a group to do that. My own, what kind of, one of the things that kind of got me in sort of urgent mode about this is, we have a daughter with special needs.
Mm.
She was born with a chromosomal anomaly, and basically we will need care her whole life. She has intellectual disability and seizures, and is not able to live independently. And so we've had to be thinking, well, what are we going to put in place for when we're gone?
Right.
um, we need to make sure she doesn't end up in some state home or something.
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
and I was really lucky in that my grandmother had been part of a mutual aid society.
Okay.
She was born in 1900 and was a school teacher, and she was a member of this association for women school teachers. And one of the benefits that they offered, they're not really offering it any. I mean, there are a couple of these homes left. They used to be all over the country,
Right.
retirement homes
Mhm.
for these members. And the deal was, if when you get to the point where you need support and you want to come live in one of these homes, as long as you can kind of take care of yourself on the day you move in, you could have a debilitating stroke the next day and they would take care of you for the rest of your days. So no
Wow.
matter what happens to you after you move in, you're taken care of.
Mhm.
And I went and visited her in her home many times. She was there for the last 8 years of her life, and it was incredible. I mean, it was, a redone old Victorian house in Nebraska. It's
Mhm.
still there. The state of Nebraska has cracked down on their ways of financing it a little bit, and so they're not able to provide quite the level of care that they used to. But the whole deal was, it was a private membership association. And so they didn't have to comply with health and safety regulations, and they didn't have to be licensed. All the stuff that adds so much money, so much expense to
Yes.
caring for people, they didn't have to do that. And so, I mean, I saw it firsthand. The level of care, the staff to resident ratio was extremely high. The way they lived together, there was nothing institutional about it at all. It was,
Wow.
they had meals together, they prayed together. It was idyllic. It was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And now just, again, it's the states have just cracked down on them. There are like, I think, two left in the country now. One of them is the one my grandmother was in. They used to be all over the place.
Yeah.
But my plan is to start that up again, kind of more aggressively using the private membership association model.
Mm-hmm.
I think my guess is what happened is they, didn't realize the rights they actually had. They didn't assert their rights when the state came in and said you can't do this anymore. But now people who are starting at PMAs, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot in our group, is the private membership association model.
Right.
People are going into it because they want to assert their rights, and so they're a lot more aware of what those rights are and how to not cave in to the state. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that the thing that I'm looking to create is a care center or a care, really more of a like a community,
Yeah.
on a lot of land for a small number of people that will be self-sustaining and that will keep going after we're gone. So that's my particular project. But then other people in our group have different projects, and we just get a lot from talking with each other, and we bring in guests. So I have guest experts come in once a month and talk with us about what they're doing, how it works, what we can learn from them, and how we can help them. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of
That's
do.
unbelievable. It's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of thing that I love to hear out there, because there's, you always, I run into this all the time with people is, well, God, this is the problem with libertarians. They talk about these things, but they don't actually do anything. Like the private sector can't provide these basic services. We have to have the state do this stuff. Like, no, you really don't. You just have to have the will and the fortitude to say, no, we're going to do it our way, and then figure it out. And get out there and actually form relationships with other people and figure out how you can get the funding together and how you can get the logistics done and how you can build the organizations and get multiple, because it's like everything else, Brittany. And I've noticed this over the years, and it's just reality, which is that different people are good at different things. So you may have a great idea for a thing, but you have no ability to, implement it because you don't have the CEO's mind, but you have the entrepreneur's mind. You have the ability to go and find people and bring them together, but you don't have the ability to organize them. That's fine. Then you move that, you give that job to somebody else you've inspired to be part of the group, and then you build a real association, and you get all the skills, and
Yeah.
you aggregate them, and then you go and do the thing. And if your legacy in this life is to have produced one or two of those things and made materially your life makes the life of 50 other people better, how much more do you want to do in this life than that? Like, if everybody would just have goals that are in effect that modest, then all of these grandiose ideas of like solving society's problems go away, because everybody's just solving little problems, and then the big problems are don't ever really crop up. It's funny. I liken this really quickly to my wife and I built our, we, like good libertarians, we built our own house, right? So the house I live in, I built, and
Nice.
and many times I've been asked over the last 20 years, like, how do you build a house? I'm like, easy, one board at a time. It's not a big task of building a house. It's a billion little tasks of hammering this nail, putting up that board, cutting that thing, putting that over there, getting this person to do this, buying the shingles, doing the thing, scheduling the work, and getting it done. And you're amazed at what you can get done if you just submit to that mindset of, I have this big goal and I'm going to parse it out in these billion little tasks in this order, and then you get it done. And you're amazed at how much you can get done in a day, no less, a year.
Yeah, yeah, and half of it, kind of as you alluded to, half of it is knowing how to find the people who
Right.
can do the things that you can't do or that you're not very good at.
Right.
And I mean, we had an amazing craftsman who we worked with. We with our California home, we
Mm-hmm.
turned the garage into just this a really, really nice multi-purpose, like workroom, bedroom,
Right.
just a gorgeous room.
Mhm.
And having someone like that to work with is such a gift. It's so finding those people
Right.
is part of it. But yeah, I think there's our society, films do this, the education system does this, the whole mythology of politics does this, that your life is meaningless if you're not shooting for being a superhero or being president, as if that's something good. But there are these kind of unattainable or just fantastic ideals out there that, and I see it with our son, the stuff that he kind of is subjected to in films and everything. And it's like, God, that's just, how do you ever live up to that? How do you ever be the superhero? Whereas if you're more grounded in reality and you're more grounded in things that you can actually do in your life, number one, it's a lot more satisfying to get some little thing done than to be looking at this superhero and wishing you were that. But it's this whole mythology that has our culture really backwards. We're so focused on the center, on Washington D.C. or Hollywood, these big things,
Right.
as opposed to being focused on where we are right now and what
Right.
we can do right in front of us.
Mhm. No, agreed. And it is, and you touched on the important point, which is the control mechanism, which is how do you live up to these massive tasks that are supposedly in front of us that we have to solve, and then when you don't solve them, what's the attendant? What's the natural reaction? Well, I'm a failure. And then there's well, that's bigger than me. I can't solve that problem. I'm like, yeah, you can. You can solve this problem by by whatever it is, starting a victory garden, doing a thing, whatever whatever that thing is. And I've been preaching this to my people in my community for forever and a day. I'm like, I don't know what your background is, I don't know what you're good at, but I know you're good at something, and I know that you're good at something that somebody else isn't. And then and I get the other thing I get asked all the time is like, well, where can we invest in this if this is all going to like start to fall apart? Where do we can't put our money in the stock market, can't put our money in the bond market. I'm like, is there a dearth of guys that work on cars in your area? Is there no tool and die shop in your town? Is there somebody who wants to start a tool and die shop in your town because things need to be replaced and fixed? you know where are we, and how can you, if you've got money and he's got talent, then you've got a business. If and not necessarily, but you have the beginnings of a solution to a real problem for your community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've been preaching this for years. I've got I mean, we moved out here ages ago, but my one of my friends is a used to work. It was a friend of my wife's when she worked for the county, in at Public Works. Um, we met him. He liked to hunt deer. We like to eat deer. He doesn't like to eat deer, but he likes to hunt them. So he would hunt my property and give me the deer. I didn't charge him for it or anything else. Then it turns out he's got a family of, his family is talented across um, numerous vectors. If you need your fence replaced or you need trees removed, he's got a brother that does that. You need animals slaughtered, and you need an animal slaughtered. His cousin will come over and string him up in the backyard and take care of it for you. Like, I don't have to. All I have to do is the studious application of money at that point, right? But everybody is enriched by this, and
Yeah.
and he's my source of meat because he's gone from working at the county to doing all the tractor work that's needed in the area and raising cows, and he's doing great, and never seen him happier, and he's brilliant. And you take one look at him and you say he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and he's not, but it doesn't matter. He lives a better life than everybody else who thinks they're so damn smart.
Yeah. I mean,
With a couple of beautiful children, and a wife who loves him, and he's got a great place, and he's got a fantastic life.
Yeah, that's winning. That's winning.
Yes, exactly. I look at him and I'm like, he's doing it right. I'm not. Up until very recently, I've been doing it wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's just it. It's like we've let. I think a lot of what we're suffering from is a crisis of imagination. I feel like we're given in in schools and in the media, we're kind of given an imagination, or we're given the products of other people's imagination, and so people are get stuck in the rat race, or they're stuck pursuing these goals that maybe that's not meaningful to them. Maybe that's not, maybe you don't want to be CEO of whatever company, or keep getting promotions or whatever it is. But if you allow yourself to kind of think about what are the things that are meaningful to me, what is going to make me happy, it's not necessarily on that path. It's not necessarily on the corporate path or the education path, or these paths that are laid out for people. But you do have to do that independent thinking. You've got to like really question yourself about um what is it, what does winning look like to me? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can tell you for a long time, I had no idea what winning was, because I was mostly making decisions about what I could see coming and saying, I just don't want to get caught in the hurricane. Right. That was, starting we started a family late. I didn't, my daughter wasn't born until I was 36 or 37. I can't quite remember now. 36 going on 37, something like that. So, and terrified of the idea of even becoming a father. Right. And it's
It is terrifying.
part of the reason why we, bought the property in the middle of nowhere and built the house in the whole 9 yards. And I had no ambitions about my former life as a chemist, and didn't think I was going to have enough money to do anything more than what I did do, which was build a modest home on, a plot of land, and, figuring I was going to have to struggle for the rest of my life. But, you know, eventually, you find the proper way through this. And I think, I love what I do now, because, I've kind of been prepping for it my entire life, and in some way, but never with the goal of anything more than, can I attract enough people to this to just make it a going concern? Nothing more than that, with no other ambitions beyond that, because you have to submit and be humble to this thing and say, maybe what you do is only going to attract 1,000 people. Okay, great, but that's what I'm going to do. And if that's all it is, I have to be, okay with that. And if I want more than that, well, then I'm going to have to figure something else out as well. So, oh,
Yeah, but I think we're that's great. If you're doing something and you're having a positive impact on 1,000 people, that's kind of amazing. That's that you're already better than all the people who aren't having a positive impact on anyone.
mm-hmm.
And that's, I just keep trying to think about what we're the world we're living in now. I think is so unnatural. It's so how we live, what our goals are. The way that kind of this our social structures. It all seems so unnatural, and natural to me seems more like people living in their communities, focused on their communities, not everyone trying to be president, or everyone trying to make it in Hollywood. And this is a big thing, in Southern California, you get all these people coming from all over the world to make it in Hollywood. And there's such a desperation there. There's such a, just the, it's hard to put a finger on exactly how you see it, but it's like you pick up on this just desperation among so many people, and like a lack of a center, a lack of a real place where they belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like even outside of California, we've come so far away from the natural ways of human beings living together and interacting,
Mm-hmm.
um, that something's got to break. Something, it's
And what's really clear is that, they keep handing us, devices and distractions which are designed
yeah,
to make sure that we never get back to that. And it's also part of, I think it's also just part of the cycle that we've we every every society goes through this in some form or another. Now, we've never gone through it quite with the rate of technological change and the amount of potential, damage we're all doing to our brains by staring in flatland all day, as opposed to living in 3D, organic space. And that's a separate issue for. I'm no expert on this, but I know that there's something fundamentally wrong with that, and I don't know that we're gonna. I don't know that we're going to survive it in some way unless we really are careful about how we go forward from here. And I know that the younger patrons that we talk. I try and remind people of this all the time. And people ask me like, well, if you could talk to your younger self and give yourself any advice, what would it be? I want to have kids early. Get your purpose early in life, and then nurture it very early in life. And that's the
yeah. Yeah. But it's sometimes a long path to get to that purpose. I mean,
yeah, it truly is.
I mean, if I had kids early, I can't even imagine, the person I was back then was not someone who would have been a good parent. But I also, if I wish I could have gotten my act together earlier and done things sooner. And yeah. But what you were saying just about the whole flatland versus reality.
Mm-hmm.
One of my yoga teachers said something that is something I think about a lot. Because I think it's one of the biggest questions or one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with if we're going to survive as a species. She said, you need to learn how to use technology without letting it use you. And most of us, to some extent, we're letting technology use us to some extent.
Sure.
And our challenge is, because we're not going to just throw it away. We're not going to, maybe some people are, but for the most part, we're not going to ditch it. How do you make use of it to serve your ends, as opposed to just being plugged into the matrix and serving their ends?
Mm-hmm. No,
and I don't have an answer to that, but that's our challenge.
It is a real challenge, especially it's a real challenge for certainly thinking about I can't jack out, like that's right. My job. This is now my job. My job is to kind of sacrifice my life in meat space in order to live in flatland, to try and figure out what's going on in the world so that I can liberate everybody else from spending their time in flatland, so they can spend their time in meat space doing real things. And that's fine. And I've been trending towards that since I'm a kid. Like I've always been that guy. So I was always fascinated with video games and computers and all this stuff when I was a kid. And so it's the way my brain, I think, either my brain was in, but I also did sports and all this other stuff. I did all of that stuff. So I don't know. It's going to be hard. I mean, it is going to be a hard thing. And we try to remind my daughter about this, all the time. It's like, take some time in meat space, but she does. And, now she's, as my daughter is the best way to describe her art is she's a budding cartoonist in a sense. And now she's learning how to she started with digital art, but now she's really spending a lot of time with mixed media art and physical media art, which is better. So it's just gonna be interesting to see how that plays itself out. And
yeah, our son is also, he's very artistic. When he was very, very young, he would just kind of use whatever materials were in front of him, and we kept him off screens until forget how old, but certainly as a small child, he never went near screens. But he would work with clay, with tinker toys, and just build these amazing sculptures. And he's been an artist since he was mobile, since he could get hands on anything. And now he's doing mostly, pretty much everything he does. He does have an art class and a pottery class, but outside of that, he's mostly doing stuff on electronics. And I'm like begging him to, could you please work with paint or something? But, part of it also is, they'll find their own way.
Yes,
we can guide them and, encourage them in certain directions, but they're going to find their own way. I think the key is just really somehow how imparting to them the distinction between being used by technology, being just being a consumer,
Mhm.
and being creative with it,
Right.
using it to do,
For
because
your own ends. Yeah.
yeah, and the creative potential is incredible. It's just you got to get that distinction. You can't just
Right.
be this vessel that it's pouring its crap into, and then you're just a drone who thinks that Biden's speech with the red background was fantastic.
Oh no,
You
that I know that is not a problem with my daughter. It's quite quite hilarious. Like, but that I'm not worried about. It my my problem. Well, I have the same fear for her that I had that my dad had for me, which is that, all right, you're enough of an iconoclast and you're enough of a disagreeable type and an anti-authoritarian that you're going to struggle your entire life with rebelling against authority at inopportune and inappropriate times. So I have that conversation with her all the time. And
Although right now, is there any inopportune time to rebel
no,
against?
there really isn't.
Yeah, I think she's going to be well suited for the days to come. I mean, my son's the same way, and that's that's what they need. They need more than anything is that rebellious spirit and the questioning. I mean, our son questions everything we say, and it drives us nuts. But it's like, yeah, that's what he needs. That's going to
Absolutely.
serve
Can
him
I
well.
ask how old your son is?
He's 15.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter is going to be 17 in April. So
Yeah.
so it's that, and I do believe that that generation, which I think they're calling the Zoomers or whatever they're calling them now, I
I
think
don't know
that
what.
generation is I think we're going to be very surprised by the reaction, the reaction back against what we're seeing with nominally the millennials, and I think we're going to be very surprised by them.
I'm
And
seeing good, and I'm in my own bubble. I get
mhm.
that. Our son's homeschooled. Most of his friends here are homeschooled. My sister's kids are homeschooled too. So we definitely are seeing things with a particular lens, but I'm impressed. I mean, these kids are they're thinking for themselves. They're not afraid. I don't see fear among these kids. And maybe that's a California versus Kentucky thing, because in California, everyone was afraid, and that was the point where I felt like, God, this wall has just come down between us, and
Mhm.
it's not like I have hatred for these people or I'm even angry at them.
Mhm.
It's really just this sense of, wow, they've brought down this wall, and you have to pick one side. You can't be on the wall. You've got to decide which side you're on. And then it's like, how do you relate to the people on the other side of that wall? It's just puzzling. It's this division that's been created. But on the other side of that wall, I saw a lot of fear in California, a lot of people just freaking out, behaving, we've all seen it, behaving in ridiculous ways. I don't see that with the kids that I'm seeing in our where we are now. I don't see that. So
Mhm.
I think we're going to be surprised too. I think they're at an age where, at that age, it's natural to start. That's when you start really questioning your parents and authority and
Sure.
all that. And this is a great time to be doing that. And so I think they're going to come out on the other side. When I lived in Asia for a long time, and I talked with a
Mhm.
lot of people who lived through the Cultural Revolution, and a lot of them had this same kind of attitude. These are the ones who weren't like, well, who made it through alive, number one, um, and who weren't horrifically traumatized, because a lot of people were horrifically traumatized. But the attitude of some of the people I met was just like, they laughed at it. They knew it was absurd. They knew it was completely ridiculous. And but what are you going to do? Yeah, they were sent out to the countryside. They did all this crazy stuff. They had to learn these ridiculous songs, and they, would sing them and stuff. But it's like they didn't have the power to stop it or to protect themselves from it, but they lived through it. And it's like, yeah, there's something valuable in just having the knowledge that that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
That's just crazy. And maybe I can't stop it, but I can at least say that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I sense that as well. Like, to give a background, we attempted to homeschool our daughter. She was homeschooled, I think, through sixth grade or so. But we also then found out that we were the wrong types of teachers for her. So eventually,
Yeah, we did too.
we looked at the situation, and and very dispassionate. And finally, my wife kind of looked at me at one point and was like, "Look, I do not want to grow up hating my daughter.
Yeah.
Therefore, it." So we found her a private school, and it was a good private school. It was mostly my daughter's just on the autism side of the spectrum, but she's mostly functional in many ways, and she'll get better over time. And she has coping systems for this and whatnot. Um, she's got a lot to learn. She's got a lot of work to do on herself. But I can't make that. I can't force that. All I can do is try and help it along. So we found her a school in town, but COVID actually destroyed
Yeah.
that relationship because in Gainesville they went nuts. Like in
Uh,
California, they went crazy.
yeah.
And so she asked to come out of that. We put her up we moved her up into a school, conservative, non-denominational Christian school, the exact opposite environment, north of us. And that was okay until the ridiculous structure and the over structure of that wasn't two structured environments. We had too
Mhm.
permissive on the one hand, we had too structured on the other, and she was fighting both of them
Yeah.
until she finally said, I want to go back to the other school. And by that time, I think everybody learned some lessons, and the hysteria over COVID is over, and she now knows how to navigate those things,
Yeah.
and she's actually doing really well, and everybody's and it seems to be an experience that she's enjoying, and she's doing well, and she's fine. She's smart as a whip, and her teachers adore her, and that's all good, and she's doing fine. So
Yeah.
it's taken a while, but it's like everything else. It's been an interesting journey for her to go through the whole process, but
Yeah. And we had a similar process. Our son started out in a Montessori school.
mhm.
Um, and for various reasons, it was a great school. It was a really wonderful school, but it was also it was far away from us. And we kind of felt like he wasn't, he was very distracted by the social stuff. And so
Sure.
at a certain point, it felt like, well, maybe homeschooling is the right thing. So we started homeschooling, which was okay, but then it kind of not enough structure,
Sure.
and finding things, especially in California, was kind of tough. But I'm really glad we were homeschooling when COVID hit, because we didn't have to make those choices about, you know, I can't see myself sending him to school in a mask.
Mhm.
And all that stuff. So I'm glad we avoided that. But at the same time, we needed some more structure. So when we came here, he's now involved in two they're Christian homeschooling co-ops, and it's kind of and we also have some tutors to work with him, so that again, so we don't have to be the teachers, because
Right.
that wasn't a great
Right.
fit for us either. And it's worked out, but it took some time to get there. We had to
Mhm.
really figure out what's the right, and this has been great. I mean, he's really hitting it off with the people in these communities, and so it's really a good fit, but it took time.
Yeah, no, it's a strange thing, like and and was the interesting part about all of this was that you know she had to do the work to get back into the school that she had first rejected, because they
Mm,
were like, "Are you sure?" Like, and so my daughter really had to do the work and prove to them that this is what she wanted
right.
and why she wanted it, what her goals were, what her and all of that. And she did immense work, and it just proved just how it just proved to everybody how miserable she actually was at the other school, and
Yeah,
therefore
yeah,
and it's all worked out, and I say it's worked out really well. It's
right.
and they're equidistant from us. Like it's still a challenge, and to get her to school every day, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, getting her to finally get her driver's license so that that's
Yeah,
and
well,
and interacting with the idiocy of the state, which she absolutely
yeah,
despises. And
yeah.
that's its own hurdle. I'm like, well, dear, look at it this way. This is a kind of low stakes mechanism by which to get used to this. Just
Yeah, because you got it. I mean,
because
I say
you're
that
gonna have to deal with it, like whether you like it or not, you know.
I didn't
Just
get my driver's license until I was 31. So
okay. All right.
don't tell her about me.
Lovely. No, I mean, but it's, she's, yeah, it's, it, I didn't
You
get mine till
have
I
to
was almost
learn.
18. I mean, I'll be honest with you, but but it was for different reasons. For her, it's, it's a variety of things about, this seeing the having to interact with people that she just doesn't want to interact with. And
Yeah, no, I get that. I
yeah,
totally get that. And
yeah,
having to interact with the system.
hmm,
Um, yeah, I mean, I avoid it as much as I can.
sure.
And yet it's something you do need to learn to do it. You don't want to be the one who goes down to the and I can picture myself, being this way of, you're so angry at the system, hate them so much that you walk in there and you're just radiating that
Yeah.
and and then end up causing a problem for yourself. You don't want to be that person. You want to, and yeah, and it's so easy to
That's
do. I mean,
me.
I try to I will sometimes. My husband, we used to joke about it, and again, this is before COVID. This is after 9/11, but before COVID. I would go into airplane mode or airport mode. Sorry,
Hmm.
now there's airplane mode. Every time we had to go to an airport, because, and it's partly because, I remembered what it used to be like before, the TSA and the pat downs and all that stuff. I remembered what civilized travel used to be. So I was pissed off.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm still pissed off.
me too.
And let me throw in a plug for Freedom Travel Alliance is one of my favorite organizations. I just wanted to mention them
Sure.
because they're fighting all that. But my husband would say, you're going into airport mode. You need to chill. You need to chill out a little bit, because I would just walk into airports and I would just get like this. And I would just be like, I dare you to come and ask me a question. I just,
Yeah, yeah.
and, you know, it doesn't help. you know,
No,
it's,
it
it,
doesn't. When we were building the house, my wife would coach me. She would say, "Okay, when the building inspector shows up, you're going to repeat after me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir." And you're not going to argue with him, and you're just going to nod your head, and whatever idiocy he says, you're going to
right,
go along with, because he has the power to make or break you.
right.
And
Life is
thankfully, we
just,
chose the right county. We knew what we were doing. We
yeah,
knew we weren't going to do this in Alachua County, where they're open communists and they hate owner builders and all of that stuff. So we found a
yeah.
piece of property in an adjoining county. We're in the right one because of that. The 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 building inspection process was easy. I made it easy on myself. I always call for an inspection on a Friday. I'm in the southernmost piece of property in my county, so he showed up at 4:30 when it was time for the beer, and so we walked around, did his thing, and then he was signed off on the permit, and it was only 4 permits, so it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was in that mode. I was in like hardcore. This was 2003. I was in like hardcore, newly minted libertarian,
Oh,
hate the
wow.
state mode. Oh yeah, I was in that
Oh,
mode.
wow.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was really bad. And I remember the last time I got called for jury duty, and, and just getting physically ill, having to sit and breathe next to that many authoritarians. And I
Oh,
was literally physically ill until I got up onto the stand, and they asked me, and it was a drug case. And they said, "So, Mr. Luongo, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "I believe in FIJA. You're free to go."
yeah.
Or juror number 187. I believe in FIJA, which, for those of you who don't know, is the Fully Informed Jury Act, which says that the jury has control over the interpretation of the law,
Yeah.
and
Which it does. Which
which
it
it
does.
does, of
But they
course.
don't want you. But if you know about it, they don't want you in
They
there.
don't want you on a jury.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
that was the
so
last time I got called for jury duty, too, by the way.
well. I haven't been. So I've been called in California, and I get an exemption because I'm a caregiver to someone who needs 24/7
Mm,
care. And so they've always, they've been they understand that, and that it hasn't been
sure.
an issue. But there's a part of me that would love to be on a jury and
Hmm.
help, and on a drug case, and help get someone, not convicted for a victimless crime. Um, but that's, maybe
Right.
in another lifetime. That's not gonna,
But
that's,
in another life, I waited very carefully, and I'm like, yeah, but you couldn't get me to do this for the number of days it was going to take to get me to go through it, and it would just be, it would be bad for everybody, and
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
I used
yeah,
my get out of jury duty
yeah.
free card.
Right. I believe in the Constitution.
Yeah,
Out of here.
I believe in FIJA, where you're free to go.
You right. Right. Yeah. It's
So
hilarious.
that's a pro tip for anybody in the audience. You don't want to do jury duty. That's all you got to say.
Yeah. Just let them know you're informed.
So, if you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of what you're seeing in terms of solutions that you've run across with people, or because I
Yeah.
think this is such an important, these are such an important distinction.
Yeah.
Uh,
So one of the things we talk a lot about is the private, as I mentioned, the private membership association. Um, and I think what's important for people to know is that as broken as our society is, as much as government has grabbed hold of so many parts of our lives, there are still a lot of tools left to us. There are still a lot of ways in which we can do what we want and build solutions. And one of those tools is the private membership association model. And basically, what it is, for anyone who doesn't know about this, it's you're taking yourself out of the public sphere. So businesses, like if you have a business in X town and you're licensed by that city, you're operating kind of at their whim. You're operating under their jurisdiction and with their permission, with their licensure. And this is what we saw in California. I mean, everywhere really, but in California, the first way that the cities started attacking any businesses that didn't go along with the mask mandate and the distancing and all that stuff was they threatened their licenses. So if the state has that kind of power over you, and it's the same with medicine, if they have the power to say whether you can do business or not, whether you can practice or not, that's kind of all encompassing. That's a huge power. And I think there needs to be more awareness. I hope now there is more awareness of how much power licensing gives the government. I mean, it's extra constitutional. It has nothing to do with, fundamental rights or anything. It's just this arbitrary power that states have to shut people down if they don't do what they want. And that's happening in medicine now. A lot of doctors are having, and it was happening before COVID too, but it's kind of getting more attention now and is happening probably more, where you want to prescribe ivermectin, we're going to challenge your license. We're going to, your medical board's going to get in contact with you. You want to talk about vaccines, you want to talk about the risk from vaccines, you better watch your license, that you might not have that much longer. So with the PMA, the Private Membership Association, you're not operating in the public sphere. You're not serving the public. So businesses are considered legally, they're considered a public accommodation. So all these, anti-discrimination laws, any kind of laws put in place to like help consumers ostensibly, and then licensing requirements, liquor licenses, health and safety requirements, all that stuff, that doesn't apply unless you're a public accommodation. That applies to businesses serving the public. It doesn't apply, if I come over to your house and you've got some great wine and I say, oh, can I buy that bottle of wine from you? You don't have to have a license to sell a bottle of wine to your friend. That's that's the same principle as private membership association. You're not under the jurisdiction of the business regulators.
mm-hmm.
And so this is a huge area where people can get in and start and are doing it already. There are PMA, some doctors have been operating as PMAs for quite a while now, just because of all the garbage that's being, that's dumped on doctors practicing.
Right.
But there are PMA like medical operations, grocery stores. What was it? Somebody in Colorado is starting up a PMA hospital, and
Nice.
and this is the model that I want to use for our project. So the PMA is one thing. There are other ways that, and most of it's kind of looking very locally. So for example, local sheriffs. I mean, I'm not at all a fan of going to politicians to try and fix things,
Right.
but if there's one person in the political structure where it makes sense to maybe have an alliance and maybe even support a candidate, it's the sheriff, because the
Of course.
sheriff decides what gets enforced, what doesn't get enforced. So
Right.
um and then there are a lot of other things. There's the whole sovereignty movement, and declaring your personal sovereignty and changing your documents so that you're a sovereign individual. There's another thing that I've been involved with is writing notices of liability for individuals who have, in my view, have violated rights by things like imposing a mask mandate, for example, or imposing a
Mhm.
vaccine mandate. Um, there are there are a lot of tools that people need to be aware of that can help us to create the world we want to create, even given all the crap that's going on and
Mhm.
given all the laws that are in place. There's an existing underground structure that we can make use of and do a lot of stuff that I think people think is impossible.
Mhm.
Um, so another example would be, so I mentioned the Freedom Travel Alliance. We had Susan Sweeten was a guest on for our, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just put a little color on that. What do they actually do? The Freedom Travel
So they're
Alliance.
pretty amazing. They so their whole goal is to make travel free again.
Hmm.
And so what they've done, one of the things they do is they operate with charter companies. So they will charter, they'll plan a flight, from one city to another city, and they'll announce it and they'll let people know about it. And then they do it as a charter. You know, and these are small planes, because you can only do that with planes up to I think 30 people is the limit.
Okay.
So they do these charter flights where, so you don't have to go through TSA, you don't have to, I mean, the mask mandate's gone now, but you didn't have to, all the garbage, all the nonsense, didn't have any of that. It's a civilized flight the way flights used to
Used
be.
to be.
um, but they have a whole team of legal experts, I think all over the world. One of the things they were doing for people early on in COVID, so like in Europe, where all of a sudden, France is requiring you have to get the vaccine to enter, even if you're a French citizen, or Ireland had these, all of a sudden overnight, these countries kind of had these ridiculous rules about the vaccine. And so they helped people get, like in many cases, get back into their own country. They found legal loopholes. They found, something like, um, well, commercial trucks can go back and forth. You don't have to have a vaccine if you're a commercial truck. So they found truckers who would take people
Right.
back and forth across borders. They helped people get out of countries. They had like people who wanted to escape some European country and move to Mexico. They helped them to do that without having to submit to any of the vaccine requirements. So it's a pretty amazing organization. And I don't know how many members they have now. I don't know how to sort of quantify what they're
Sure.
doing, but what they're up to is pretty cool.
No,
Um,
that gives you a lot of hope. Again, this is an example of, look, we can build these systems if we're willing to, put the effort forth. And yeah,
yeah,
it's terrible that we have to go to these lengths in order to be able to do it. It's wrong that, they're going to put this many barriers up in front of us in order to be able to do it, and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, if you want that world, then, like, it's we're gonna have to continue doing that. Now, will they close those down eventually? Yeah, they'll try, and we'll see, and then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But it's like everything else.
yeah,
Like, at some point, when we really start to think about what the state's capable of enforcing, when you really stop to think about it. When there are more enforcers than there are people to be enforced, the whole system collapses under the weight of its own, its own unsustainability, which is, the same, criticism that we've had of the monetary system or anything else for forever, which is that eventually all these interventions, all of these things, these enforcements and these rules that distort the market of what people want, once you distort it far enough, then it just can't sustain itself.
Yeah.
And so our best way of getting around all these things is to peacefully say, you know what, we'll use this instead. Yeah, it's more expensive that way. Yeah, it's annoying, but you know what? It's what I want.
Well, and not only that, the fact that it is going to collapse, and libertarians have been predicting the collapse of the US empire for, decades, and maybe it's not as close as to happening as we think it is, but I feel like it is kind of in a state of collapse. And
it's not just the American empire. I think Europe is in a far worse position than we are. And that's been the heavy theme of all of my writing, is that Europe is far, far worse, much farther along, and they think that they're gonna get everything that they think they ever wanted, and then they're gonna wake up one day and there's not gonna be anything except guillotines and ropes and
right, if they make it through this winter. I mean,
right.
So. But the we have this opportunity. It is coming down in various, and that's something my dad used to always say. His whole life he was saying, "Oh, it's all coming down," and then as soon as he's gone, it starts all coming down. But we have this opportunity. It's really an amazing opportunity, because it is coming down. It is collapsing. What's going to be there to take its place? We have the opportunity to start building that now.
Yes.
We can start putting in place, and that's my vision for mutual aid and for helping vulnerable populations. Is that's one of the first things that's going to go, really. It's not, they as the state's going down, it's going to keep funding its military industrial complex buddies. It's not going to keep funding the care homes and the nursing homes.
We're into open eugenics, and in Canada,
the language. Oh my God, yeah.
No, it's very clear that's where we're headed next. They're going to go, well, we can't afford the healthcare system. First, you all have to get onto it, and then we can't afford it anymore. And this is something that Dexter White and I complain about all the time. We when we chat about it, and it's the one area that is very clear that they want complete control over, so that they can ensure that there is not going to be any care for anyone. And I'm not even going to relate some of the things that we went through with my wife's sister recently, who just died of
I heard about that. Yeah,
and it is what it, and I don't want to, but it could have been a lot worse than it was, and in many ways because she could have lingered into the system for months or years. But just even trying to get her a proper diagnosis and even proper, some amount of proper care. And it just made it very obvious very quickly that the system is not designed to care for people. The system is designed to ensure that services get billed. That's all they really care about. And everything else does not matter. The doctors hate it. The nurses hate it. The orderlies hate it. The only ones who like it are the hospital administrators and the bureaucrats. And everybody else, and the lawyers, because they're all the ones making money off
it. And now with the COVID money going, hospitals getting what was it, $30,000 for every COVID death. There was a clear financial incentive, and there are horror stories coming out. I don't know if you've seen some of these, but absolute horror stories where people are brought in, and sometimes they're distinguished as to whether they're vaccinated or not, but then they're isolated, not given food or water. I mean, they're left to die, and if they're lucky, they can have a family member come in and rescue them. But it's murder. I mean, it's actual murder, and it's being documented, thankfully. But it's gotten to a point. I mean, people are afraid to go into the hospital now, and with good reason. which to me, I see the flip side of that is this is a tremendous opportunity to create some PMA hospitals,
Yes.
create some care facilities that actually are dedicated to care, that
Yes.
are not part of the insurance world.
I think you're absolutely on to the core issue of what we should be working on.
Yeah,
I can only say I'm so glad we had this conversation
yeah.
to find that that's what you're working on, because that's amazing. This is the state is supposed to be there. It's kind of its job is to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's the lie. That's the great lie that they promulgate all day long, all day every day, and yet here we are. And yeah,
I think if you go by the rule of thumb that everything the state purports to do, you're going to get the opposite result.
of course.
You're not going to go too far wrong with that.
Right. It just, assume that when a politician's talking, he's lying. But
Yeah.
he's lying when his lips are moving, and and then and whatever they tell you, they just believe something else, and you're going to be right 75% of the time. And yeah, so you're wrong 25% of the time. Okay, so what? Like I'm willing to bat 750. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's not
Like
bad.
most people are most certainly in my line of work, which is analysis and prognostication. Like most people are batting three. If they're batting 300, they're doing great. Like,
I don't know what that means because I don't do baseball.
oh, that means you're batting three. You're batting 30%. You're hitting
Okay.
hit. You're getting hit. You're getting a hit 3 out of every 10 times at bat. So if you're batting 300,
Yeah.
it's 0.3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's all. Yeah, no, that's sorry.
I think I mean, because we sound kind of cynical when we talk that way, but I think what people really need to understand is that the political system is founded on a lack of accountability.
Right.
It's basically it's buying and selling unaccountability.
Right.
You're if it creates this safe space for people to kind of do whatever they want with other people's lives and never pay the price of it.
Yep.
And my hope, and I hope I'm right about this because there's a lot of hope in this, is that's what's coming down. That's what's coming crashing down, that you can only maintain a system of no accountability for so long before it just crashes at every level, financial, physical,
Right.
societal, moral, all those things. It can't sustain itself forever. And so I think it's that whole paradigm of lack of personal accountability that's going to break. And when it does, if we've done our jobs, there will be this new world, that we've been building up to be there.
Right. And I know that, the anxiety that everybody's feeling about that breakdown is what's driving so much of our politics on all sides of it. And people are reacting the way they're either, and many of us, we react based on our imprinting, what we think we know about the world. And that's of course used cynically. It's also the fire hose of information is meant to keep us in a state of anxiety and fear, so that we're thinking fight or flight all the time, as opposed to using our reason, as opposed to stepping back and going, no, I'm not going to worry about that today. I'm going to focus on building this and getting this done. And that's the hard part. I mean, one of the things that I know that we're thinking about moving into next is this idea of getting people to remember how to think and how to reason and how to assess information. It's part of what it is. It's part of our, it's part of our ethos, or in this is to get that structure and thought back into the process. And then from there, it's not about complaining about what's not working, but figuring out, okay, well, we know that's not working. Let's get past that. Let's accept it. Let's go through the 5 stages of the Kubler-Ross,
right,
and let's get to acceptance, and so we can start building. And unfortunately, too much of what we see around us is they're trying to keep us in anger and depression and never get us through to acceptance.
Yeah. Well, you'd think that a certain point with the fire hose, you'd think there'd come a certain point where people are just kind of numb to it, where it doesn't get that fear response anymore. But I don't know, maybe
I think we're getting close to that. I think I think to bring this all the way back to the beginning so that we can kind of close this out, which is that the exodus we're seeing of people like yourself and others, the people of conscience and the people who are like, this is crazy. I need to get near people who are not. I think that's the beginnings of this. And now it's a matter of, and then we look at all the new innovations and technologies in decentralization that are happening. Obviously, the big one is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's not just, but Bitcoin is, Bitcoin solves this, but as a metaphor, it's the classic example of when you push a system too far, then out of whack, then eventually the innovation has to come through and take over and create a better solution, and opens up the opportunity for those new technologies to be profitable in the grand scheme of things, and to then become sustainable and be an antipode to the crazy. And I think that's we're at just at that ugly juncture where everything is in flux.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
What's it going to look like on the other side? Well, it's a long process.
Yeah. And it's up to us. That's up to us.
And it is up to us. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
That seemed like a good place to stop.
Yeah. Awesome. That was great.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, Bretigne, it was wonderful meeting you for the first time. And hopefully we can do this again in the future at some point. You can give us an update on what you've been working on and what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to have you come on my podcast sometime too.
I'll just send me an invite and I'll be happy to do it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, that'll do. You guys, you have a great afternoon, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay. All right. You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 118 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. I want to thank Bretigne Schaffer for a lovely conversation, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back soon with something else, with someone else soon. Between now and then, you can follow my work over at my blog at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. And you can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Gold, Goats, and Guns, where you can get the newsletter and or just become a member of the community and get all the private blogs and podcasts that they do for my patrons there. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. And keep your stick on you guys.